Welcome to HOA Catastrophe. The board picked the wrong week to play games. I am standing in my driveway in Madison, Wisconsin, holding a snow shovel, and a middle-aged woman in a black puffer coat is screaming at me that my sidewalk is a liability emergency, and my van is getting towed in the next 12 hours unless I fix it right now. Her name is Judith Gray. She is the pool and amenities chair for the Wintergate Terrace Village Association, and she has decided that the 2-inch strip of packed snow along the edge of my otherwise perfectly cleared sidewalk is a code red violation. I moved here 6 weeks ago for a restaurant supply rep job that keeps me on the road 3 days a week. I drive a branded van with my company logo on the side, and I park it in my driveway because guest spots fill up fast. The HOA here is aggressive. Every neighbor I have met has warned me that the portal is full of icy sidewalk photos and accusations, and that Judith controls amenity access like a nightclub bouncer. I thought I could keep my head down and follow the rules. I was wrong. Judith is holding a laminated policy sheet and jabbing her finger at the snow edge like she is prosecuting a murder. She says, "You can be mad or you can be compliant. And either way, this gets fixed tonight or your guests will be cited starting tomorrow." I ask her what the actual width requirement is. She says it is in the packet, and I should have read it when I closed. I tell her I did read it. The rule says clear to the curb, and I cleared to the curb. She says the curb is not the snow edge, the curb is the original concrete line, and that edge right there is non-compliant. I point out that the city plow pushed that snow back when it came through this afternoon. She says that is my problem, not hers, and if I cannot maintain compliance during active weather, I should not have bought in a managed community. A plow contractor is standing by his truck about 20 feet away, pretending to check his phone, but I can see him listening. I take a breath and ask Judith if there is a formal hearing process. She says I can request one, but the hearing is not until next month, and enforcement does not pause just because I filed a complaint. She says the board already voted to escalate snow violations this season, and repeat offenders lose amenity access until spring. I ask her when that vote happened. She says it was at the annual meeting in October. I was not living here in October. She says that is not her concern. Then she pulls out her phone and takes a photo of my van, my driveway, and the sidewalk edge. She says this is going in the file, and if I get cited for anything else this winter, she can make this a lean conversation in one email. I feel my stomach drop. I just bought this place. I cannot afford to get dragged into court or lose access to the garage gate and the package room. The package room is the only secure delivery option, and I have vendor shipments coming in twice a week. If she locks me out, I am going to lose inventory and probably my job. Judith walks back to her car and drives off. I stand there for another 10 minutes, scraping that edge down to bare concrete with a flat shovel and a salt scoop. By the time I finish, my hands are numb and my back is screaming. I go inside and pull up the HOA portal on my laptop. There are 43 posts in the last 2 weeks. Half of them are photos of sidewalks with captions like, "Still waiting for compliance," or, "This is how people get hurt." Judith has commented on every single one. I search for the October meeting minutes. There is a PDF, but when I try to open it, the site says I need to pay a $20 records fee to download historical documents. I pay the fee. The file downloads. It is a scanned image of a handwritten page with half the text cut off. There is no mention of a snow vote. There is no mention of enforcement escalation. The only thing I can read clearly is a line that says, "Pool maintenance contract approved, Judith Gray abstaining." I call my real estate agent. She does not pick up. I leave a message asking if she remembers anything in the disclosure about snow width rules or records fees. Then I email the management company. I attach a screenshot of the sidewalk edge and ask for clarification on the curb definition. I get an auto reply that says the office is closed until Monday. It is Thursday night. I sit at my kitchen table and stare at my phone. I let her talk because every word was helping me. I did not say that out loud, but I am thinking it now. Judith is so confident she is right that she is not even trying to cover her tracks. She took a photo of my van without asking. She threatened to lean in front of a witness. She refused to hand over the policy sheet. Every time she escalates, she is building my case. The next morning I wake up to an email from the HOA. It is not from the management company. It is from Judith, sent at 6:45 in the morning. The subject line says, compliance reminder. The body says, your driveway snow stakes are considered temporary signage under Section 12.4 and must be removed within 24 hours of installation. Failure to comply will result in a $50 fine per day per stake. I walk outside in my bathrobe and boots. There are 3 orange stakes along my driveway edge. I put them there 2 weeks ago so the plow guy would not hit my mailbox post. They are the same stakes every other house on the block is using. I look across the street. My neighbor has 6 stakes. The house next to him has 4. Nobody else has gotten a notice. I take photos of every driveway on the street, then I go back inside and reply to Judith. I say, I see at least 30 stakes on this block. Are you enforcing Section 12.4 uniformly, or just on my property? I do not get a reply. Saturday afternoon, I am loading my van for a Monday route. I hear a car door slam. I turn around and Judith is walking up my driveway. She is not alone. There is a man with her, maybe 50, wearing a Wintergate Terrace polo and a clipboard. He introduces himself as the compliance officer. Judith says they are here to do a property walk because my guest parking registration expired last week and I have not renewed it. I tell her I do not have any guests parked here. She says my van counts as a guest vehicle because it is not registered to my home address. I tell her it is a work vehicle and it is registered to me personally. She says work vehicles over 10 feet require a commercial variance, and I did not apply for one. I ask her where that rule is written. She holds up the laminated sheet again and refuses to hand it over. The compliance officer does not say anything. He just writes on his clipboard. I ask if I can see what he is writing. He says it is an internal assessment and I will get a copy if a violation is issued. Judith points at my plow stakes and says they were supposed to be removed yesterday. I tell her I am waiting for her answer about uniform enforcement. She says she does not owe me an explanation, and if I keep arguing, she is going to recommend a full property audit. The compliance officer nods. Then, Judith walks over to one of my stakes and yanks it out of the snow. She says, these are not stakes. They are unauthorized signage, and I am removing them under my authority as amenities chair. I pull out my phone and start recording. She sees the camera and freezes. She says, you do not have my consent to record me on HOA property. I say, this is my driveway. She says the driveway is part of the common easement per the plat map, and I am trespassing if I interfere with her enforcement duties. She pulls out the second stake. The compliance officer steps between us and says, let's all take a breath. Judith pulls out the third stake and walks back to her car. She throws all 3 stakes in her trunk. I stand there with my phone still recording. The compliance officer says, you are going to get a notice on Monday, and if you want to contest it, you can file a variance request with the board. Then, he leaves. I go inside and email the video to myself. Then I text my neighbor across the street. His name is Marcus. He's lived here for 8 years. I ask him if Judith has ever pulled stakes off his property. He texts back, no, but she tried to fine me for parking my trailer in the driveway overnight last winter. I fought it, and she dropped it after I threatened to sue. He says Judith has been on the board for 6 years, and she uses amenity lockouts as punishment. If you cross her, she will freeze your pool pass, your gate code, your package room access, everything. He says the management company does not care, because Judith is the only board member who responds to emails. I ask him if he has copies of old meeting minutes. He says he has some, but they are incomplete. He offers to testify if I need a witness, but he is leaving town tomorrow night for work and will not be back until February. I tell him I might need him tonight. He says he can come over after dinner. Monday morning I get the notice. It is a formal violation letter on HOA letterhead. It lists 3 infractions. 1. Failure to remove temporary signage within the required time frame. 2. Unauthorized commercial vehicle storage. 3. Non-compliant snow clearing creating pedestrian hazard. The total fine is $350, due within 10 days, and it says my amenity access is suspended pending compliance verification. I call the management company. The woman who answers says she is just the receptionist and I need to talk to the property manager. She puts me on hold for 12 minutes. When the property manager picks up, I explain the situation. She says she does not handle enforcement. That is up to the board. I ask her if Judith has the authority to remove property from my driveway. She says she would have to check the bylaws. I ask her if the board voted to escalate snow violations. She says she was not at that meeting. I ask her when the meeting was. She says October 15th. I ask her if there is a recording or a transcript. She says recordings are only kept for 90 days unless someone requests a copy in writing. I ask her who requested a copy. She says she cannot disclose that. I ask her if the board is required to follow open meeting laws in Wisconsin. She pauses. Then she says, I am not an attorney, and if you have legal questions, you should consult one. Then she hangs up. I spend the rest of Monday researching Wisconsin statutes. Chapter 38.03 covers open meeting requirements for associations. Every board meeting where business is conducted has to be noticed at least 24 hours in advance, and the notice has to include an agenda. Minutes have to be available to members within a reasonable time, and members cannot be charged a fee to access current year records. I pull up the HOA portal again and search for the October 15th notice. There is nothing. I search for September, August, July. There are no meeting notices posted at all. I download every available document. Then I file a records request with the management company. I ask for copies of all board meeting notices, agendas, minutes, and attendance logs for the last 12 months. I cite Chapter 38.03. I send it certified mail, and I email it to the property manager and Judith. I do not expect a fast response. I am right. Tuesday night, Marcus comes over. I show him the video of Judith pulling the stakes. I show him the violation notice. I show him the records request. He says, You are doing everything right, but you need to understand that Judith does not care about rules. She cares about control. If you fight her, she is going to make your life miserable until you either give up or move out. He says the last person who challenged her was a guy who complained about the pool hours. Judith locked him out of the pool for the entire summer and claimed he had unpaid dues. He paid the dues. She said there was a processing delay. He filed a complaint with the state, and 2 weeks later his car got towed from the guest lot because someone reported it as abandoned. He moved out in October. Marcus says, I am not trying to scare you. I am just telling you what you are up against. Then he says, if you are serious about fighting this, you need to go after the management company. They are the ones who are supposed to be enforcing the bylaws, and they are letting Judith run wild, because it is easier than dealing with her. I ask him what he means. He says the management company is called Midwest Community Solutions. They manage 43 associations in the Madison area. They have a regional supervisor who handles complaints. If you can prove that Judith is violating state law, the supervisor will force the board to respond, because the management company does not want to get sued. He gives me the supervisor's name and email. Her name is Angela Brennan. He says she is tough but fair, and if you have documentation, she will listen. I thank him. He leaves at 8:30. I sit down and draft an email to Angela. I attach the video, the violation notice, the records request, and screenshots of the portal showing no meeting notices. I explain that Judith is enforcing rules selectively, removing property without authority, and charging fees for records that should be free. I cite Chapter 38.03. I say I am not asking for special treatment, I am asking for uniform enforcement and compliance with state law. I hit send at 9:15. Then I go to bed. Wednesday morning I wake up to 3 emails. The first is from Angela Brennan. It says, I received your complaint, and I am reviewing the file. I will respond within 48 hours. The second email is from Judith. It says, your records request has been forwarded to our attorney for review. Processing fee is $150. Payment is required before we release any documents. The third email is from the management company. It says, effective immediately. Your amenity access codes have been reset pending compliance verification. Please contact the board to schedule an inspection. I feel my chest tighten. I need that package room. I have a shipment arriving Thursday morning. If I cannot get in, the driver is going to leave it at the door, and it is going to get stolen or soaked in the snow. I grab my phone and call the property manager. She does not answer. I leave a message. Then I call Judith. She picks up on the first ring. She says hello. I say, I just got an email that my access codes were reset. She says, correct. I say, I need access to the package room for a delivery tomorrow. She says, you can apply for temporary access once you have paid your fines and completed the compliance inspection. I say, I have not had a compliance inspection yet. She says, that is not my problem. You were offered an inspection on Saturday, and you refused. I say, I did not refuse anything. Your compliance officer showed up unannounced, and you pulled my property off my driveway. She says, I removed unauthorized signage under my enforcement authority. If you have a problem with that, you can file a variance request. I say, I already filed a records request. She says, and we will process it as soon as you pay the fee. I say, the fee is illegal. She says, that is your opinion. Then she hangs up. I drive to the package room. It is in the clubhouse building, next to the pool. There is a keypad on the door. I punch in my code. The light blinks red. I try again. Red. I pull out my phone and call the after-hours line for the management company. Nobody answers. I text Marcus. He says, they can reset your codes remotely. If Judith told them you are non-compliant, they will lock you out until she says otherwise. There is nothing you can do except wait for Angela to step in. I sit in my van and stare at the package room door. My shipment is supposed to arrive at 7 in the morning. If I am not there to sign for it, the driver is going to leave it outside, and it is going to be gone by noon. I cannot let that happen. I text my boss and explain the situation. He says, figure it out. If we lose that shipment, it is coming out of your commission. I feel my stomach drop again. That shipment is worth $4,000. If I lose it, I lose a month of income. I sit there for another 20 minutes. Then I get an idea. Thursday morning at 6:45, I park my van in the guest lot and walk to the clubhouse. The delivery truck pulls up at 7:03. I meet the driver at the curb. I tell him the package room is locked and I need him to leave the boxes with me. He says he needs a signature and a delivery address. I give him my address. He scans the boxes and hands me the scanner. I sign. He loads the boxes into my van. I drive home. By the time I unload everything into my garage, it is 7:30 and I am late for my first stop. I call my boss and tell him the shipment is secure. He says, good, now get on the road. I spend the rest of the day driving to 3 restaurants in the western suburbs. I get home at 6. There is a notice taped to my front door. It is from Judith. It says, violation of guest parking policy, unauthorized overnight vehicle storage, $50 fine per occurrence, effective immediately. I look at the date. She issued the notice this morning. I parked in the guest lot for 45 minutes. I rip the notice off the door and crumple it. Then I take a photo of it and email it to Angela. If you are enjoying this chaos, hit the like button and subscribe, because this story is about to get even wilder. Friday morning, I get a reply from Angela. It says, I have reviewed your complaint and the documentation you provided. I am scheduling a call with the board president and the property manager for Monday at 10. You are invited to join. Please confirm your availability. I reply immediately and say I will be there. Then I get another email from Judith. It says, your compliance inspection is scheduled for Saturday at 9. Failure to attend will result in additional fines and extended amenity suspension. I reply and say, I will be there. Saturday morning at 8:55, I am standing in my driveway with a shovel, a salt bucket, and my phone. Judith pulls up at 9:02. She is alone. No compliance officer. She gets out of her car and walks up to me. She says, "I am here to verify that you have corrected all cited violations." I say, "The sidewalk is clear. The stakes are gone because you took them. The van is registered to me. What else do you need?" She says, "I need to see your guest parking log." I say, "I do not have any guests." She says, "You parked in the guest lot on Thursday." I say, "I parked there for 45 minutes to meet a delivery driver because you locked me out of the package room." She says, "Guest parking is for guests, not residents. If you use guest parking, you are required to log it in advance." I say, "Where is that rule written?" She holds up the laminated sheet again and refuses to hand it over. I pull out my phone and start recording. She says, "I already told you you do not have my consent to record me." I say, "I am recording on my property to document this inspection." She says, "Fine." Then she walks around my house. She takes photos of my siding, my roof, my gutters, my mailbox, my driveway, my garage door. She stops at the side of the garage and points at a small crack in the concrete. She says, "This is a structural defect and it needs to be repaired within 30 days. I say, "That crack has been there since I moved in. It is not a defect, it is normal settling." She says, "That is not my assessment." She takes a photo. Then she walks to the front door and points at my doormat. She says, "Decorative items on common property require prior approval." I say, "It is a doormat." She says, "It is an unapproved decorative item." She takes another photo. Then she gets in her car and drives away. I stand there with my phone still recording. I feel like I am losing my mind. She is inventing violations faster than I can respond to them. I email the video to Angela. Monday morning I join the call with Angela, the property manager, and the board president. The board president is a man named Dale. He sounds exhausted. Angela starts by summarizing my complaint. She says I have alleged selective enforcement, illegal records fees, unauthorized property removal, and amenity lockouts without due process. She asks Dale if the board held a meeting in October to vote on snow enforcement escalation. Dale says he does not remember. Angela asks him if the meeting was properly noticed under Wisconsin law. Dale says he does not know. Angela says, "That is a problem, because if the meeting was not noticed, any votes taken at that meeting are invalid." Dale says he will check with Judith. Angela says, "I am checking with you. You are the board president." Dale says Judith handles all the enforcement and he does not get involved. Angela says, "You are legally required to get involved. The board is responsible for ensuring compliance with state law, and right now you are not in compliance." She says the records fee is illegal, the amenity lockout is improper, and the property removal is theft unless there is a documented safety hazard. She says if the board does not fix this within 7 days, she is going to recommend that Midwest Community Solutions terminate the management contract and report the violations to the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Dale is silent for a long time. Then he says, "What do you want us to do?" Angela says, "First, rescind the fines and restore amenity access immediately. Second, provide the requested records at no charge. Third, hold a special meeting to review and revise the enforcement policy, and notice that meeting properly. Fourth, issue a written apology to the homeowner for the unauthorized property removal." Dale says, "I will talk to Judith." Angela says, "I am not asking you to talk to Judith. I am telling you what the board needs to do. If Judith has a problem with that, she can take it up with me." The call ends. I sit at my kitchen table and stare at my phone. I feel a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe this is going to work. Maybe Angela is going to force them to back down. Then I get an email from Judith. It says, "The board has reviewed your complaint and determined that all enforcement actions were conducted in accordance with our governing documents. Your fines remain in effect." Your amenity access will be restored upon payment and compliance verification. We will not be issuing an apology. I forward the email to Angela. Tuesday afternoon, I get a call from Angela. She says, I just got off the phone with Dale. He says Judith is refusing to cooperate, and he does not have the votes to overrule her. The board is 3 people: Dale, Judith, and a treasurer named Linda. Linda always votes with Judith. Dale says he is tired of fighting, and he is planning to resign at the end of the month. I ask Angela what that means for me. She says it means the board is dysfunctional, and I need to escalate outside the HOA. She says I should file a formal complaint with the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. They have a consumer protection division that handles HOA disputes. If I can prove that the board is violating open meeting laws and charging illegal fees, they will open an investigation. She says the process takes time, but it is the only way to force accountability. She gives me the website and the complaint form number. Then she says, I am sorry I could not do more. This is the worst board I have dealt with in 10 years. I thank her and hang up. I spend the rest of Tuesday filling out the complaint form. I attach every document I have: the video of Judith pulling the stakes, the violation notices, the illegal records fee email, the screenshots showing no meeting notices, the email where Judith threatened a lien, the email where she refused to cooperate with Angela. I write a 2-page summary explaining that the board is using enforcement as retaliation, violating open meeting laws, and charging illegal fees to block transparency. I cite Chapter 38.03. I hit submit at 9:30. The website says complaints are reviewed within 10 business days. I do not have 10 business days. I have a neighbor who is willing to testify, but he is leaving town tonight. I text Marcus and ask if he can write a statement before he leaves. He says yes. I drive over to his house. He hands me a printed letter. It says he witnessed Judith removing property from my driveway without permission, that she has a history of selective enforcement, and that the board does not follow proper meeting procedures. He signs it and dates it. I thank him. He says, good luck, and I hope you bury her. Then he leaves for the airport. Wednesday morning, I get an email from the management company. It says, effective immediately, all snow clearing instructions are being updated. Please refer to the attached diagram for proper clearing width and technique. I open the attachment. It is a hand-drawn diagram with arrows and measurements that contradict the original rule. The new rule says I have to clear 48 inches from the building face, measured perpendicular to the structure, regardless of where the actual sidewalk is. That means I am supposed to clear into the lawn and the planter strip. I email the property manager and ask if this is a joke. She replies, this is the new policy, as approved by the board. I ask when the board approved it. She says last night. I ask if the meeting was noticed. She does not reply. I call Angela. She says, this is retaliation, and it proves they are not following open meeting laws. Save that email. It is evidence. Then she says, I have bad news. Midwest Community Solutions just told me they are not renewing the management contract with Wintergate Terrace. The board is going self-managed starting March 1st. That means I will not have any authority after February. If you do not resolve this before then, you are on your own. I feel the walls closing in. I have 2 months to fix this, or I am stuck in a neighborhood run by Judith with no oversight and no recourse. I sit down and write an email to Dale. I say, I know you are planning to resign, but before you do, I need you to answer one question. Did the board hold a properly noticed meeting last night to approve the new snow clearing policy? If not, that policy is invalid, and Judith is acting without authority. I am asking you as the board president to confirm whether the meeting happened and whether it was legal. If you do not respond, I am going to assume the answer is no, and I am going to include your silence in my state complaint. I send the email. I do not expect a reply. I get one in 30 minutes. Dale says, there was no meeting last night. Judith sent the new policy to me and Linda by email and said we approved it by unanimous consent. I told her that is not how board votes work. She said it is fine because nobody is going to check. I am resigning effective immediately. I am done with this. I forward the email to Angela and to the state complaint portal. Then I sit back and wait. Thursday morning I wake up to a knock on my door. I open it. There is a tow truck in my driveway. The driver is hooking a chain to my van. I run outside in my bathrobe and boots. I say, "What are you doing?" He says, "I got a call from the HOA that this vehicle is abandoned." I say, "It is not abandoned. I live here." He says, "I am just following the work order. If you have a problem, call the HOA." I call Judith. She picks up immediately. She says, "Your vehicle has been parked in violation of the commercial storage policy for 3 weeks. We sent multiple notices. You ignored them. This is the consequence." I say, "You sent one notice, and it was dated 5 days ago." She says, "We sent a courtesy notice 2 weeks ago. You must have missed it." I say, "I did not miss anything. You are lying." She says, "I do not appreciate your tone. If you want your vehicle back, you can pay the towing fee and the storage fee, and apply for a variance." I say, "I am not paying anything. You do not have the authority to tow my vehicle." She says, "I absolutely do. The board voted to authorize emergency towing for safety violations." I say, "When did the board vote?" She says, "Last month." I say, "There was no meeting last month." She pauses. Then she says, "You can be mad, or you can be compliant." I hang up. I walk over to the tow truck driver. I pull out my phone and show him Dale's email saying there was no meeting last night. I say, "This tow order is fraudulent. The person who called you does not have the authority to authorize this. If you take my vehicle, I am going to report it as theft and you are going to lose your contract." He looks at the email. Then he looks at me. Then he unhooks the chain. He says, "I do not get paid enough for this." He gets in his truck and drives away. Judith is standing 10 feet away. Her face is red. She says, "You just interfered with an official enforcement action. I am filing a police report." I say, "Go ahead. I have everything on video." She storms back to her car. I stand in my driveway and watch her leave. Then I go inside and call the police non-emergency line. I report that someone attempted to have my vehicle towed without authorization. The dispatcher says an officer will come by to take a statement. An hour later, a squad car pulls up. The officer listens to my story. I show him the emails, the video of Judith pulling the stakes, the tow truck footage. He says, "This is a civil dispute. You need to take it up with the HOA or file a lawsuit. I cannot do anything unless there is a criminal act." I ask him if unauthorized towing counts. He says, "Not if the HOA believes they have the authority. You would have to prove fraud, and that is above my pay grade." He leaves. I sit on my couch and stare at the ceiling. I feel like I am fighting a war with no weapons. Friday afternoon, I get an email from the State Consumer Protection Office. It says, "We have received your complaint and assigned it to investigator Sarah Pruitt. She will contact you within 5 business days to schedule an interview. In the meantime, please continue to document all interactions with the HOA." I feel a tiny surge of relief. Finally, someone is paying attention. Then I get another email from Judith. It says, "The board has scheduled a special meeting for Monday, February 3rd at 6 p.m. at the clubhouse. Agenda includes discussion of enforcement policy revision, member conduct violations, and legal action against member for interference with board duties. You are invited to attend." I read the email 3 times. She is threatening to sue me. I forward the email to Angela. She replies, "This is a scare tactic. They cannot sue you for filing a complaint or defending your property. But you should go to the meeting and record everything. Bring a witness if you can." I text Marcus. He is still out of town. I text my real estate agent. She does not reply. I am on my own. Monday night, I drive to the clubhouse. It is snowing again. I park in the guest lot and walk inside. The meeting room is on the second floor. I take the stairs. When I get to the door, Judith is standing outside. She says, "The meeting is closed to non-board members." I say, "Your email invited me to attend." She says, "You are invited to present during the public comment period, but you cannot stay for the executive session." I say, "Wisconsin law requires open meetings. You cannot close the meeting unless you are discussing personnel or legal strategy." She says, "We are discussing legal strategy." I say, "Then you cannot take any votes." She says, "We are not taking votes. We are discussing." I say, "Fine. When is the public comment period?" She says, "After the executive session." I say, "So you are going to discuss legal action against me in private, and then I am supposed to comment on it without knowing what you discussed?" She says, "That is correct." I pull out my phone and start recording. She says, "Stop recording." I say, "No." She steps in front of the door and blocks me. I say, "You are obstructing my access to a public meeting." She says, "This is not a public meeting, this is a board meeting." I say, "Board meetings are public under Wisconsin law." She says, "Not executive sessions." I say, "You cannot hold an executive session to retaliate against a member." She says, "I am not retaliating, I am protecting the association." Then she goes inside and closes the door. I stand in the hallway for 40 minutes. I can hear voices inside, but I cannot make out the words. At 7:15, the door opens. Linda comes out. She is the treasurer. She says, "You can come in now." I walk inside. Judith is sitting at the head of the table. Linda is next to her. Dale is not there. Judith says, "You have 3 minutes for public comment." I say, "I want to respond to the agenda item about legal action." Judith says, "We did not take any votes. We only discussed." I say, "What did you discuss?" She says, "That is privileged." I say, "It is not privileged if it involves me." She says, "It is privileged because it involves potential litigation." I say, "You cannot threaten to sue me in private and then refuse to tell me what you discussed." She says, "I am not refusing, I am protecting the association's legal strategy." I say, "There is no legal strategy. You are making this up to intimidate me." She stands up. She says, "This meeting is over." I say, "You did not give me 3 minutes." She says, "You used your 3 minutes arguing. Now leave." I leave the meeting room. I sit in my van and replay the audio. I can hear Judith saying, "He is a liability, and we need to consider our options." I can hear Linda saying, "Can we just fine him until he moves?" I can hear Judith saying, "We can do that, but we need a paper trail." I save the audio and email it to Angela and the state investigator. Then I drive home. When I get there, there is another notice on my door. It says, "Violation of meeting conduct policy, disruptive behavior, $50 fine." I take a photo and add it to the file. I am so tired I can barely think. I sit at my kitchen table and pull up my bank account. I have $600 left after rent and bills. If Judith keeps fining me, I am going to be broke by March. I cannot let that happen. I need a trump card. I need something that proves she is lying, something that proves the board is acting illegally, something that forces them to stop. I pull up the HOA portal again. I search for meeting minutes. I search for bylaws. I search for financial reports. Everything requires a records fee. Then I remember something Angela said. She said the management company is supposed to keep copies of all governing documents, and members have a right to inspect them for free. I email the property manager and ask for an appointment to inspect the HOA records. She replies, "The records are kept at the clubhouse, and you need board approval to access them." I reply, "Wisconsin law says I have a right to inspect records without board approval." She does not reply. Tuesday morning, I drive to the management company office. It is in a strip mall on the east side. I walk in and ask for the property manager. The receptionist says she is not in. I say, I am here to inspect HOA records under Wisconsin statute. She says, you need an appointment. I say, I do not need an appointment, I need access. She says, I cannot help you. I ask to speak to Angela. She says Angela is not in either. I sit in the lobby for an hour. Nobody comes out. Finally, I leave. I drive to the clubhouse. I walk inside and try the office door. It is locked. I knock. Nobody answers. I pull out my phone and call Judith. She does not pick up. I text her. I say, I am at the clubhouse and I need to inspect HOA records. She replies, you do not have authorization. I reply, I do not need authorization. She replies, you are trespassing. I reply, this is common property. She does not reply. I sit in the lobby for another hour. Then I get a call from a number I do not recognize. I answer. A man says, this is Officer Grant with Madison PD. We got a report that you are trespassing at the Wintergate Terrace Clubhouse. I say, I am not trespassing. I am a member, and I am here to inspect records. He says, the property manager says you do not have permission to be there. I say, I do not need permission. This is common property. He says, it is private property owned by the association, and if the board says you are trespassing, you need to leave. I say, the board is violating my statutory right to inspect records. He says, that is a civil matter. If you do not leave, I am going to issue a citation. I leave. I sit in my van and call the state investigator. Her voicemail picks up. I leave a message explaining that the HOA is blocking my access to records and filing false trespassing reports. I say I need help immediately. Then I call Angela. She picks up. I tell her what happened. She says, they are in full panic mode. That means they are hiding something. She says I should file a motion in small claims court to compel record access. It costs $35, and the hearing is usually scheduled within 2 weeks. If the judge orders them to produce the records and they refuse, they can be held in contempt. I ask her if she thinks it will work. She says, it is your best shot. Then she says, I talked to Dale this morning. He told me something off the record. He said Judith has been charging records fees and pocketing the money. She told him it was for administrative costs, but he never saw an invoice. He thinks she has collected over $2,000 in the last year, and none of it went to the management company or the HOA account. If that is true, it is embezzlement. I feel my chest tighten. I say, can you prove it? She says, not without the financial records. That is why they are blocking you. They do not want you to see the bank statements. I hang up and drive to the courthouse. I file the motion. The clerk says the hearing is scheduled for February 14th. That is 10 days away. I do not have 10 days. I have a state investigator who is supposed to call me in 3 days, and I need those records before the interview, so I can prove the fees are illegal and the money is missing. I leave the courthouse and drive home. I sit at my kitchen table and stare at my phone. Then I get an idea. I pull up the HOA portal and search for the treasurer's contact information. Linda's email is listed. I send her a message. I say, I am filing a formal complaint with the state alleging that the board is charging illegal records fees and misappropriating funds. If you have any information about how those fees were handled, now is the time to come forward. If you stay silent, you are going to be named as a co-defendant. I hit send. I do not expect a reply. I get one in 2 hours. Linda says, I did not know about the fees. Judith told me she was handling records requests and I did not ask questions. If she took money, I had nothing to do with it. I reply, then you need to provide the bank statements and meeting minutes that prove it. She says, I do not have access to those. Judith keeps everything on her laptop. I reply, you are the treasurer. You are supposed to have access to the financial records. She says, I know, but Judith said the management company handles the accounting and I do not need to see the statements. I reply, that is not how it works. You are legally required to review the financials. If you did not do that, you are liable for any misappropriation. She does not reply. Wednesday morning, I get a call from Sarah Pruitt, the state investigator. She says she has reviewed my complaint and she wants to schedule an interview. I ask if I can do it today. She says, I have an opening at 2. I say yes. At 1:30, I drive to the state office building in downtown Madison. Sarah meets me in the lobby. She is in her 40s sharp suit, no-nonsense expression. She takes me to a conference room. She says, I have read everything you submitted, and I have a few follow-up questions. First, do you have any evidence that the board charged records fees to other members? I say, no, but I can ask around. She says, do that. Second, do you have any evidence that the board held meetings without proper notice? I say, yes. I pull out Dale's email saying there was no meeting last night. I pull out the portal screenshots showing no meeting notices for the last year. She takes copies. She says, this is good. Third, do you have any evidence that board members personally benefited from the illegal fees? I pause. I say, I have an email from the treasurer saying Judith kept the fees and did not report them to the management company. Sarah says, I need to see that email. I pull it up on my phone. She reads it. Then she says, this is embezzlement. I am going to escalate this to the criminal division. She says the HOA is going to get a notice within 48 hours that the state is opening a formal investigation. She says they are going to be required to produce all financial records, meeting minutes, and correspondence related to records fees. If they refuse, the state can impose fines and file criminal charges. She says I should expect retaliation, and if it happens, I need to document everything and report it immediately. Then she says, you did the right thing. This board is out of control, and we are going to shut them down. I leave the state office building and sit in my van. I feel like I just won the lottery. The state is stepping in. Judith is going to be investigated. The board is going to be forced to comply. I pull out my phone and call Angela. I tell her what happened. She says, congratulations. You just took down the worst HOA chair I have ever seen. Then she says, but be careful. Judith is not going to go quietly. She is going to try to destroy you before the state shuts her down. I say, what can she do? She says, anything. Fake violations, harassment, vandalism, false police reports. She is desperate, and she has nothing to lose. I say, I can handle it. She says, I hope you are right. Then she hangs up. I drive home. When I pull into my driveway, Judith is standing there. She is holding a clipboard. She says, I am here to do a final compliance inspection before the board files a lien. I say, you are not filing a lien. The state is investigating you for embezzlement. She freezes. Her face goes white. Then she says, that is a lie. I say, it is not a lie. I just came from the state office. They are opening a criminal investigation, and they are going to subpoena your financial records. She says, you are bluffing. I pull out my phone and show her Sarah's business card. She stares at it. Then she says, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. She gets in her car and drives away. Thursday morning, I wake up to an email from the management company. It says, the Wintergate Terrace Village Association Board has voted to freeze all enforcement actions pending a full policy review. All outstanding fines have been rescinded. All amenity access has been restored. We apologize for any inconvenience. I read the email 3 times. Then I laugh. They caved. The state scared them so badly they are backing down before the investigation even starts. I forward the email to Angela. She replies, told you. Nobody wants to go to jail for an HOA. Then I get another email. It is from Linda. It says, I am resigning from the board effective immediately. I cannot be part of this anymore. Then I get a third email. It is from Dale. It says, I heard the state is investigating. I am willing to testify if you need me. Judith tried to get me to cover for her, but I am done protecting her. I reply, "Thank you." Then I sit back and wait. Friday afternoon, I get a call from Sarah. She says, "I have an update. The HOA attorney contacted us this morning and said the board is willing to settle. They are offering to rescind all fines, restore your access, refund any fees you paid, and issue a written apology. In exchange, they want you to drop the complaint." I say, "What about the embezzlement?" She says, "That is a separate criminal matter, and we are moving forward regardless of whether you settle." The attorney knows that. This settlement is just to avoid civil liability. I say, "What do you recommend?" She says, "It is up to you. If you settle, you get your money back and you get closure. If you do not settle, you can file a lawsuit, but that could take months and cost you more than you would recover." I think for a minute. Then I say, "I will settle on one condition. Judith has to step down from the board, and she cannot hold any leadership role in the HOA for the next 5 years." Sarah says, "I will pass that along." She calls me back in an hour. She says they agreed. Judith is stepping down immediately. The board is going to hold a special election to fill her seat. The settlement includes a clause that prohibits her from running for any board position or committee chair for 5 years. I say, "Done." She says, "I will send you the paperwork. Sign it and send it back, and we will close the complaint." Saturday morning, I get an email from Judith. It says, "Per the settlement agreement, I am resigning from my position as pool and amenities chair effective immediately. I will no longer be involved in HOA enforcement or governance. I wish you well." That is it. No apology. No explanation. Just a cold, clipped goodbye. I do not reply. I do not need to. She lost. The state opened a case file. The HOA rushed to settle. Judith was forced to resign from every leadership role, and she cannot spin it. She tried to bury me with fines and threats and fake violations, and it backfired the moment I filed a state procedure complaint that forced the HOA to respond. I let her talk, because every word was helping me. I spent weeks gathering proof, and when I finally deployed a records request response proving they hid documents unless paid bogus fees, she repeated her claim one last time on record, and it destroyed her. The funny karma moment is that Judith called the snow edge a snow emergency and threatened to tow my van over it, and the city notice from the plow contractor confirmed there was no emergency at all. She made up the rule to target me, and it came back to prove she was lying. Monday morning, I get a check in the mail from the HOA. It is for $520. That is every fee and fine they charged me, plus interest. There is a letter with it. It says, "The Wintergate Terrace Village Association Board sincerely apologizes for the enforcement issues you experienced. We are committed to improving our processes and ensuring fair treatment for all members. If you have any questions, please contact the board president." I fold the letter and put it in a file. Then I walk outside and look at my driveway. The snow is melting. The plow stakes are gone. The sidewalk is clear. I take a deep breath. It is over. I drive to work. My boss calls me at noon and says, "I heard you had some trouble with your HOA." I say, "It is handled." He says, "Good, because I need you to do a route in Milwaukee next week." I say, "I am on it." I hang up and smile. I am free. Judith is gone. The board is scrambling to rebuild. The state is still investigating her for embezzlement. I won. A month later, I run into Marcus at the mailbox. He is back from his trip. He says, "I heard you took down Judith." I say, "I did." He says, "How does it feel?" I say, "It feels like I can finally breathe." He says, "You did what the rest of us were too scared to do. You stood up to her and you won." I say, "I just followed the law." He says, "It is more than that. You proved that HOAs are not untouchable. If they break the rules, they can be held accountable." I say, "I hope so." Then I walk inside and sit at my kitchen table. I pull up the HOA portal. There is a new post from the interim board president. It says, "We are holding a town hall meeting next week to discuss enforcement policy reforms and answer member questions. All members are welcome to attend." I mark my calendar. I am going to be there. Not because I want to fight, but because I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.